I couldn't believe my eyes the moment I stepped into the sunlit lobby of the resort, my heart skipping as if it had recognized something it had been missing for years. There he was, standing near the glass doors, looking just the same yet older, and my stomach twisted in a way I hadn't expected, my mind screaming that this was impossible. He had been gone for so long, vanished without a word, and now he was here in the Maldives, wearing a casual linen shirt and that crooked smile I had tried to forget, and for a moment I froze, my suitcase half open, sun beating down through the wide windows, people milling about, but I only saw him, only felt the sudden surge of emotions I thought I had buried, anger, longing, and a strange flutter of hope that maybe this time things could be different. And yet I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just stared, my hand brushing against the strap of the bag across my shoulder as if holding onto it could anchor me to reality. And then I heard a soft voice behind me, familiar but faint, "Mom?" And I turned to see my son, taller than I remembered, with the same bright eyes and easy smile, and he held out a small box in his hands, wrapped neatly in white paper with a ribbon, and my heart shifted again, confusion twisting with surprise, because why would he bring me a gift on the first day of vacation, why now? And then I realized he had been watching me all along, waiting for the right moment. And the box seemed almost too small to contain the meaning behind it, and I stepped closer, my voice barely audible. "For me?" And he nodded, hesitated, then said, "I thought you might like it for the beach." And when I opened the box, my breath caught. Inside was a swimsuit, bright and elegant, exactly the color I loved, soft and flowing in a way that made me imagine the sun on my skin, waves at my feet, and I laughed, partly out of relief, partly out of disbelief. "You remembered." And he smiled, the same shy, proud smile I had always loved, and suddenly the tension in my chest eased, replaced by a warmth I hadn't felt in years, the kind that reminded me of long afternoons when he was small and curious, full of questions and laughter, and I hugged him tightly, the sunlight catching on the ribbon, the noise of the lobby fading into a soft blur. And then I realized I hadn't seen him for months, had worried endlessly, and now here he was bringing me this gift, a gesture that said more than words ever could, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back, wanting to savor this first moment, the feel of his hands, the scent of his shampoo, the quiet laughter we shared as I teased him for his nervous energy, the kind of laugh that only comes when you are entirely comfortable with someone. And we didn't speak of the past, not yet, but the weight of it hung silently between us, as if the ocean beyond the glass was pulling our hearts toward something inevitable. And then he grabbed my hand, tugging me gently toward the balcony, saying, "Come look at this." And I followed, my steps unsteady, my chest tight, my mind racing, because I didn't know what to expect. The balcony door slid open with a soft whisper, and the view struck me silent, the turquoise waves rolling endlessly beneath the soft pink sky, the sunlight dancing on the water, and in that moment, for the first time in months, I felt a spark of peace, but it was fragile, fragile as glass, because behind the beauty of the scene I couldn't ignore the figure I had seen earlier, the man near the doors, the one who had made my heart lurch with memories I had tried to lock away. And now the same man was walking along the beach below, and for reasons I didn't understand, he glanced up and our eyes met, sharp and knowing, and I felt a shiver run down my spine, an electric pull that made my stomach twist again, because this wasn't coincidence, and in that instant, the sunlight on the waves seemed to dim, and all I could hear was the pounding of my heart, each beat louder than the last, and my son squeezed my hand, looking up at me with excitement, oblivious to the storm in my chest. "Mom, you have to try this," he said, motioning to the soft sand below where the waves lapped gently. "It's perfect." And I nodded, forcing a smile, trying to focus on the gift, the moment, the small miracle of his presence. Yet I couldn't shake the figure walking slowly along the beach, his steps deliberate, purposeful, and suddenly, without warning, he disappeared behind the line of palm trees, leaving me staring at the sand, my pulse racing, the gift in my hands heavier than I realized, full of meaning and yet full of questions I couldn't answer, my son bouncing on his heels. "Mom, are you coming?" And I swallowed hard, nodding, my mind a whirlwind of emotions, gratitude, confusion, and something else I couldn't name, the ache of memories colliding with the thrill of the present. And as we descended the steps to the sand, I felt my phone buzz and a new message appeared from a number I didn't recognize, and when I opened it my blood ran cold because the text was simple, only one line, but it was enough to stop me mid-step. It said, "I see you. Do you remember me?" And I froze, my son unaware, chattering about the warm water and the soft waves, and I felt my heart hammer in my chest, realizing the vacation I thought would be about sunshine and laughter had suddenly become something else entirely. A memory I hadn't expected to awaken, a story that wasn't finished, a person I had never truly forgotten standing on the edge of my perfect escape, and my gaze shot toward the line of palm trees, scanning for a sign, a shadow, anything, while my son tugged at my hand again. "Mom, come on, don't stop now." And I tried to smile, nodding, but inside, I felt the electric pull of a past I had buried, the sudden recognition that everything I thought I knew about this trip, about my heart, about timing, was about to change in ways I wasn't ready for. The text burned in my mind, repeating itself over and over, and the gentle waves at my feet suddenly felt like the beginning of something I couldn't control, something waiting to unfold. And as I looked back toward the trees, the figure was there again, just for a moment, catching the light in the fading sun, and then gone, leaving only a whisper of a memory, a heartbeat of recognition, and a question that wouldn't leave me: who was he, and why now, and what did he want? And with that thought, my son laughed, unaware of the storm building inside me. "Mom, come on, try it, the water is amazing." And I nodded, holding the swimsuit tight against my chest, feeling the weight of everything in that moment, the gift, the waves, the past, the unknown message. And I stepped forward, toward the water, toward him, toward the feeling that this trip, this moment, was about to change everything in ways I had never imagined. And my heart knew it even before my mind did, that nothing in the Maldives or in my life would ever be the same again. As I waded into the gentle waves, my mind refused to stay in the present, tugging me back to the first time I had met him, a memory so vivid it felt like it had been yesterday. I was sitting on the steps of the park near our old neighborhood, reading a book under the shade of an oak tree, and he had come running, laughing, chasing a soccer ball that had rolled too far, and he had tripped right at my feet, eyes wide, cheeks flushed, and I had reached out to steady him, our hands touching for the first time, that small spark igniting a connection neither of us could name yet. And he had looked up at me with that same mischievous smile, saying, "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." And I had laughed, telling him it was fine, but inside something shifted, a sense that this boy, this bright, curious, untamed presence, was going to matter in ways I couldn't yet understand. And from that day on, he had found reasons to be near, asking questions, sharing secrets, bringing me flowers from the park, simple dandelions or tiny wild roses he said he had picked because they reminded him of me. And I had been enchanted, not by his gestures alone but by the attention, the way he saw me, the way he listened as if my words were treasures he never wanted to lose. And we had spent countless afternoons in that small park, talking about dreams, about fears, about what we wanted from life, the bond growing silently but surely. And I had watched him grow from a shy, excitable boy into a thoughtful, kind young man who had inherited my stubbornness and my laughter. And yet somewhere along the way, our closeness had collided with distance, my own life pulling me into responsibilities I hadn't anticipated, work and obligations taking me away from the small moments we had cherished. And he had tried to reach out, sending letters and messages I had read but never answered, too wrapped up in the idea of being busy, thinking I was protecting him, protecting myself. And I remembered the sting of the last time we had spoken before our silence began, the way his voice had trembled as he said, "I just want you to know I love you no matter what." And I had swallowed the lump in my throat, forced a smile, and said nothing in return, the words lodged in my chest, unspoken, as if saying them aloud would shatter the careful life I had built. And then came months of quiet, long stretches where I imagined him alone, wondering if I had abandoned him, wishing I could rewind time, wishing I had told him that my heart had always been with him even when my lips could not speak. And now here, years later, standing in the Maldives with the water curling around my ankles, seeing him again, feeling the small box in my hand with the swimsuit inside, I realized how the distance had been both literal and invisible, the silence not just empty but heavy, the kind of silence that builds walls thicker than any I could climb over alone. And I remembered the last night before he had left, the night of the big argument, over something so small it seemed absurd now, a misunderstanding about a trip he wanted to take and I had forbidden, my stubbornness clashing with his insistence, words spoken too fast, pride flaring, and in the heat of that moment, he had packed and left without another word, leaving me with an emptiness that had grown like a shadow over the years, the kind of emptiness that made every smile feel smaller and every joy incomplete. And yet, even in that darkness, I had never stopped caring. Never stopped imagining what it would be like to see him again, to hear his voice, to feel that spark. And now, Here he was, and my chest tightened with a mix of anticipation and fear because I wasn't sure if the gap could be bridged so easily. And as I lifted my gaze from the water, I saw him laughing, unguarded, carefree, and a memory struck me like lightning. The day he had taken me to the lake when he was 12, carrying me across the small wooden bridge as the sunset painted the sky in streaks of gold and pink, and he had said, "Mom, promise me we'll always come back here, just us." And I had nodded, smiling through tears I hadn't wanted him to see, and in that moment, I had realized he had always been trying to hold on to me even when the world was pulling us apart. And I recalled another moment, the day he had won his first school award, running to show me the certificate with pride shining in his eyes, and I had hugged him tightly, whispering that I was proud too. Never realizing how deeply those small moments had stitched our hearts together, moments that the silence had never been able to erase, and yet, even as the warmth of those memories filled me, I felt the weight of the unsent letters, the unread messages, the words that had never been spoken, because they were still there, waiting for the right time, waiting for this trip, waiting for him. And now he stood beside me, nudging me gently with a grin, saying, "Mom, the water's perfect, come on." And I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, forcing my focus to the present, yet I couldn't ignore the fact that the message on my phone from earlier that morning, the text from the unknown number, "I see you. Do you remember me?" still lingered, and as I scanned the beach again, a realization hit me, something I hadn't noticed until this very second. The way he had handed me the swimsuit, the careful way he had wrapped it, the timing of his arrival, everything about this moment seemed orchestrated, deliberate. And then I remembered the last time I had been in the Maldives, years ago, alone, searching for something I couldn't name, and the thought struck me that maybe, just maybe, someone had been waiting all this time to make sure we would meet here, at this exact moment. The waves lapping at my feet, feeling almost like a heartbeat echoing across the sand, and as my son laughed again, tugging at my hand, I felt a shiver run down my spine because I noticed a small envelope tucked in the sand nearby, half buried, almost invisible, and instinctively I picked it up, brushing away the grains, and my hands trembled as I saw my name written in a handwriting I recognized instantly, elegant and deliberate, the kind of handwriting I hadn't seen in years, a memory flooding back of a notebook he used to carry. The words he had written in the margins, secret messages, small thoughts shared only with me. And now here was a note from him, not my son but the other figure, the one who had disappeared from my life so suddenly all those years ago. And my pulse quickened because the envelope felt heavy with meaning, a bridge between past and present, a whisper of a story I thought had ended. And as I tore it open, my son still unaware, playing at the water's edge, I realized that the words inside might change everything I thought I knew about that summer, about him, about why we had drifted apart. And the twist hit me before I even read a line. The note wasn't just about a memory, it contained a secret, a truth about our past that could rewrite my entire understanding of the years of silence, and my heart pounded as I clutched the paper, knowing that everything I had believed was about to be questioned, that the Maldives, the waves, the sun, the sand, and my son's laughter were about to be woven into a revelation that I could never have anticipated. And for the first time, I felt a thrill of both fear and anticipation, a mixture of longing, hope, and dread, because the past was no longer just a memory. It was alive, waiting for me to open the door, and I did, and everything changed. The waves lapped softly at my ankles as I turned from the small envelope in my hand and looked up, and there he was again, standing not 10 feet away, sunlight glinting off his hair, the same quiet strength in his eyes that I remembered, and my heart jumped, a mixture of longing, fear, and disbelief washing over me, because after all these years, after the silence, after the distance that had felt impossible to cross, here he was, real and present, and I could feel the tension coil between us, electric and impossible to ignore. And he looked at me with the faintest tilt of his head, a question in his gaze, something like recognition mixed with hesitation, and I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening on the envelope as if holding it could steady me. And he stepped closer, careful, deliberate, and his voice, low but steady, cut through the sound of the surf. "I didn't think I'd see you here." And I could feel the weight of every unsaid word between us, every argument that had never been resolved, every night I had wondered if he had moved on, if the years had hardened him against me, and yet here he was, a living echo of the past, and I responded, my voice soft, "I didn't expect to see you either." And for a moment we simply stood, letting the sun and the waves speak while our memories collided, and then he laughed, a short warm sound that reminded me of long afternoons in the park, of quiet evenings at home when the world felt small and safe, and he said, "You've changed." And I felt a jolt. Because he meant more than my appearance, more than the swimsuit or the brightness of the day. He meant that he saw the years etched into me, the distance, the growth, the mistakes, and I nodded. "And you too." And I watched the flicker of surprise cross his face, the unspoken recognition that neither of us had stayed the same. And then he glanced at the envelope in my hand, and his expression softened, a shadow of the boy I had known peeking through the man he had become. "You found it," he said quietly, and I hesitated. "I did." And my voice trembled as the memories came rushing back, the park, the lake, the first time we had shared a secret, the last time we had argued, the night he had walked away. And I realized that all those years of silence had left us fragile, raw, but not broken, because here we were, standing on the same sand, looking at the same waves, and the years felt both far away and impossibly close, the weight of all the years and memories pressing into that small paper. And he held it, fingertips brushing mine, and I saw recognition in his eyes, a shock that made him step back slightly, because the words inside were not what he expected. And I realized then that this trip, this reunion, was not just about catching up. It was about truths long buried, about misunderstandings waiting to be cleared, and secrets waiting to be revealed. And he looked at me, voice low. "This changes everything." And I nodded, my heart racing. "I know." And for a long moment we just stood there, waves washing around our feet, sunlight glinting on the water, breaths mingling in the warm air. And I felt the old connection flare to life again, fierce and fragile like a candle in the wind. And then he asked quietly, almost a whisper, "Do you forgive me?" And I paused, feeling the weight of the past and the pull of the present, the memories and the longing, the tension and the love, and I said, "I think I've been waiting to." And his eyes softened, relief and hope mingling there. And then I realized that the envelope, the note, the swimsuit, the waves, the Maldives, all of it had led us here, to this moment where silence was ending, where hearts could speak. And yet, even as I nodded, I knew there was more to say, more to uncover, more to understand, and the truth hung in the air, unspoken but felt, a possibility that could change everything, a choice not yet made. And as the sun touched the horizon, spilling gold across the water, I felt that everything about this reunion, everything about the way we looked at each other, every brush of hands, every shared glance was leading to a turning point, a moment where the past and the present would collide, and the story of us interrupted for years was about to begin again in ways I could not yet predict. And I took a deep breath, feeling the pull of memory, longing, and the first real hope in years, knowing that whatever came next, the moment we had now was ours, and that the envelope held a secret that could either rebuild us completely or challenge everything we thought we knew. And with his gaze still fixed on mine, and the waves whispering around us, I realized that the choice was ours to make. But the heart never forgets, and neither do I. And the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, leaving the answer hanging between us, delicate, fragile, and full of possibility. The envelope trembled in his hands as he slowly opened it, and I watched his eyes widen, the sunlight glinting off the waves behind him, and in that instant, the air between us changed, charged with something I had both feared and longed for. And he read the first line aloud, voice low, cautious. "I never meant to let us drift apart." And I felt my chest tighten, the words echoing everything I had wanted to hear for years. And then he looked up at me, eyes searching, pleading for the truth. "Mom, I thought you hated me." And I shook my head. Immediately, my voice firm but soft. "Hate never touched me, not once, I just didn't know how to reach you either." And he exhaled sharply, relief mixed with lingering hurt painting his features. And I realized that all the months of silence had been built on fear and pride, misunderstandings that had grown into walls neither of us knew how to scale. And he stepped closer, the sand shifting beneath his feet, his hand brushing mine. "I left thinking I was protecting you, protecting us," he admitted, and my eyes watered as I said. And I stayed silent, thinking the same, that distance would keep us safe. And for a moment, the sound of the waves was louder than our words, as if nature itself was holding its breath. And I remembered the night before he had left, the argument over something so small now it felt almost trivial, my stubbornness clashing with his determination, words spoken too quickly, pride flaring, and in that instant he had walked away, leaving a silence that stretched for years. And now he was here, holding a note that explained everything, yet not everything, because some pieces were still unspoken, the feelings, the regrets, the longing that neither of us had admitted. And I could see the weight of the years in his shoulders, in the way he glanced at the sand, at the waves, and then back at me, and I realized how much he had carried with him, the quiet ache of separation, the small hopes that I would understand, and I felt my own heart shift as the truth settled between us, undeniable and raw, and he said, "I thought. If I left quietly it would hurt less, but it hurt more." And I stepped closer, voice trembling but steady. "It hurt me too, more than I could bear every day." And our hands met, fingers intertwining for the first time in years, the touch sending a shock through both of us, a reminder of everything that had been and could still be, and then he laughed softly, a sound tinged with sadness. "I never stopped thinking about you, about us." And I smiled, tears running freely now. "I know I never stopped either." And he tilted his head, a question in his eyes. "So why did we wait so long?" And I swallowed hard. "Because we were scared, scared to face the truth, scared of hurting each other more, scared of what we might feel if we tried again." And the words hung between us like fragile glass, shimmering in the sunlight, unspoken yet fully understood, and he nodded, pressing the envelope to his chest. "This letter, these words, it changes everything. But it doesn't erase the years we lost." And I reached for his hand again. "No, but it gives us a chance to rebuild, to start over, to finally speak." And the sound of the waves grew quieter in my ears, as if the world was narrowing down to just the two of us, standing on the sand, hearts open, raw, and ready to face whatever came next. And then he looked at me, eyes glistening. "I need to know, will you forgive me for leaving, for all the silence, for the distance?" And I hesitated, the weight of the past heavy in my chest. Then nodded slowly. "I forgive you because I love you, and I've always loved you, even when you weren't here." And a smile broke across his face, relief and joy mingling with something tender and fragile. And we stood there, hands clasped, hearts open, the waves wrapping around our ankles like a gentle embrace. And then he spoke again, voice quieter this time, almost a whisper. "There's something else I need to tell you, something I never shared before I left." And I froze, pulse quickening. "What is it?" I asked, and he took a deep breath, struggling with the words. "It wasn't just the argument, it wasn't only pride. I was afraid of losing you completely, and I did something I regretted every day since." And my stomach knotted as I waited, the sun dipping lower, casting long golden shadows across the sand, and he said, "I wrote a letter before I left, a letter I never sent because I didn't think you'd understand." And my heart pounded in my chest as he pulled another envelope from his pocket, worn and slightly crumpled, the paper familiar in a way that made me ache. "I kept it with me all these years, and I was too afraid to give it to you until now." And I took a step closer. "Show me," I whispered, hands trembling, and he handed it over slowly, like it held the balance of our entire story. And I unfolded it, reading the first lines, words full of apology, love and longing, the kind of words that could heal old wounds and reopen hearts. And tears blurred my vision as I felt the depth of his regret, the sincerity of his emotions, the honesty that had been missing in our silence. And then I looked up at him. "Why didn't you ever tell me any of this before?" And he shook his head, voice thick. "Because I thought if I told you you'd never forgive me, and I couldn't bear losing you again." And I stepped closer, resting my hand against his cheek, feeling the warmth of him, the familiarity of him, the bond that had survived years of distance. "I forgive you because I understand now, because love is bigger than fear." And he closed his eyes briefly, leaning into my touch, a sigh escaping him, the kind of release that comes after carrying a secret too long. And then he opened his eyes again, gaze intense, searching mine. "And there's one more thing, something I didn't even know how to say." And I felt my breath catch, anticipation and nervousness mixing in my chest. "Tell me," I said, voice low, almost trembling, and he hesitated. I met someone when I was away, and I thought I could move on, but I couldn't because no one has ever been you." And I blinked, heart tightening with conflicting emotions, hurt and relief swirling together. "You couldn't replace me?" I whispered, and he shook his head. "No, I tried, but it didn't work, it never felt real, it never felt like home, and now I realize home is wherever you are." And the waves rolled gently beneath us as the words sank in, and I felt tears streaming down my face, not of sorrow but of something deeper, something raw and true, a feeling I had waited years to experience again. And then he took both my hands in his, eyes locked on mine. "I need to know if you feel the same, if we can try again, if we can rebuild what we lost." And I swallowed hard, my chest tight. "I want to more than anything." And his lips curled into a soft, tentative smile, but then his expression darkened slightly, a shadow passing across his features. "There's one more thing," he said quietly. "Something that could change everything if you don't forgive me." And my pulse raced, my heart caught in my throat, the sun dipping toward the horizon, waves sparkling gold as the tension built between us. The past and present colliding, the love and fear intertwined, and I realized that this moment, this conversation, was the pivot on which everything else would turn. The choice we made now would define the rest of our story, and I felt the weight of years pressing down on us, and then he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I didn't tell you before because I was afraid of losing you for good, but I need you to know now. I wasn't entirely honest when I left." And I stared at him, breath caught, my mind racing, waiting for the revelation that could either shatter us or bind us closer than ever. And the waves continued to lap gently at our feet, the sun casting its final golden rays across the water, and in that quiet, fragile moment everything hung in the balance, the truth yet to fully come out, the past fully confronting the present, and the choice was ours to make. The next words he spoke could change everything, and I held my breath, waiting for the confession that could redefine us forever. The words hung in the air, heavy and fragile, and I looked at him, seeing every year of absence, every unspoken apology, every memory that had shaped us both, and in that moment, I realized that the weight of the past could not hold us down any longer, because the truth was out, and with it came a strange, powerful freedom, and he reached for my hand, his fingers warm and steady around mine, and I felt a tremor of hope run through me, the kind of hope that had been buried under years of misunderstanding and distance. And we stood there on the sand, the waves curling gently around our ankles, sunlight shimmering off the water, the ocean stretching endlessly before us, a vast mirror reflecting the possibilities ahead, and he spoke, voice quiet but firm. "I need you to know that I never stopped loving you, not once, not for a single day." And I felt tears prick my eyes as I whispered back, "And I never stopped loving you either, even when I was angry, even when I was scared." I held on to the hope that we would find each other again. And his thumb brushed across my knuckles, gentle and steady, and I realized that forgiveness had nothing to do with forgetting, everything to do with accepting, and we were ready to accept each other fully, with all our flaws, regrets and memories. And he took a step closer, bringing his face level with mine, and I could see the same mixture of fear and longing in his eyes that I felt in my own, and we breathed in unison, letting the waves and the wind carry away the tension and the years of distance. And then he pulled something from his pocket, a small folded note, and handed it to me, saying softly, "I wrote this a long time ago before I left, and I want you to have it now, because it's the truth I didn't know how to speak back then." And I unfolded it, the paper worn at the edges, and the words were simple, heartfelt, every line a confession, every sentence a promise, and I felt my heart swell as I read, because the note spoke not only of his love but of his respect for my strength, his admiration for who I had become during our time apart. And it ended with a line that made me catch my breath. "No matter the years, no matter the distance, my heart has always known its home, and that home is you." And I looked up at him, unable to stop the tears. "Now," and he smiled, the sunlight catching his face, warm and tender, and I realized that this was the moment that had been waiting for us all along, the point where the past and present met, and we could step into a future that was ours to shape together. And I reached out, taking his face in my hands, feeling the familiar warmth, the steady beat of his heart under my fingertips, and I whispered, "I forgive you, I always have, and I love you more than I can say." And he leaned in, and our foreheads touched, a gentle grounding gesture, not needing words because everything that needed saying had already been said. And around us, the ocean continued its rhythm, the sun slipping lower, painting the sky in streaks of gold and pink, and for the first time in years, I felt entirely present, entirely seen, entirely loved. And he held my hand tightly, pulling me toward the water, and we walked together along the edge, letting the waves wash over our feet, laughing quietly, the sound of the surf mingling with our joy. And I remembered all the moments we had shared, the first meeting in the park, the afternoons by the lake, the small gifts, the letters, the moments of connection that had never truly faded, and now they had brought us to this perfect, quiet understanding, a reunion not rushed, not dramatic, but calm and real, filled with warmth, trust, and the kind of love that endures. And as we paused, looking out at the horizon, I noticed a small paper boat floating toward us, carried by the gentle current, and inside it was a tiny note, written in a childlike hand, my son's handwriting, saying simply, "I knew you would find each other." And I laughed through tears, feeling the final piece of the story fall into place, realizing that love had never truly left us, that our family, our bond, had been quietly guiding us all along. And I took a deep breath, letting the salty air fill me with clarity and peace, and he squeezed my hand, looking at me with awe and gratitude. "We have so much time now, don't we?" And I nodded, smiling through the tears. Yes, we do, and we will make every moment count. And the sun dipped lower, turning the sky a brilliant orange, reflecting on the water like a promise, and we stayed there, hand in hand, hearts aligned, feeling the waves and the wind and the warmth of each other's presence, knowing that the years of separation, the misunderstandings, the silence, had only made this reunion deeper, more precious. And as the last rays of sunlight touched the horizon, I felt a profound sense of closure, not just for the past but for every moment we had lost, and yet also a thrilling anticipation for the future. And I realized that sometimes love is patient, sometimes it waits quietly in the background, and sometimes it returns exactly when it is meant to, stronger and wiser than before. And as the waves kissed our feet, as my son laughed in the distance, and as the note in the paper boat drifted past us, I leaned into him, breathing in the warmth, the safety, the truth, and whispered, "Home is wherever we are together." And he smiled, a soft, unguarded smile full of hope and certainty. And in that moment, with the sun setting, the ocean stretching endlessly, and the world quiet around us, I knew it was true, that love had never left, that hearts had remembered, and that this was only the beginning of everything we had been waiting for.